topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart.
Hello, and welcome to It's Your Voice, the show that hosts enriching conversations in diversity. My name is Bahia Yaksan. I am a core alignment coach, an emotional wisdom training specialist, and a diversity, equity, and inclusion educator. I have a website if you're interested in looking at my programs. I offer online courses. I tailor in-person trainings, and you can find them at knowwhatyouvantcoaching.wordpress.com. And they're based on helping us learn to recognize microaggressions, bias patterns that are destructive to everyone, essentially, and how to step out of them. The great news is we can unlearn those patterns and create and reinforce and practice new ones. And today I'm super excited because we have a team of people who have a very unique solution to diversity, equity, and inclusion training. The group is called EquityQuest, and they use the nature as a classroom with horses as guides. And I'm so eager. We have 5 team members today, and I can't wait to bring them on. So we'll bring them on one at a time. Susan Tomsberry, who we'll call Tommy, who's the CEO. Welcome to the show. And as you're coming on, hopefully, I don't know if we will or will not have our cowboy, but I would like to say Keith Roberts in case he can show up today. That'd be fantastic. And he's also the Chief Operating Officer. And then we also have Nasir Bayon, and they will each share with you what their role is with EquityQuest after they're all on. And Kim Hannon Parrott, who I've known for years. Wonderful to see you in this platform. And then we also have Dr. Carl Jefferson. And I hope, do we have, nice wave. And I'm sure if Keith can join us, he will be added, and that would be wonderful. So welcome. And I would just love to hear, we'll just start with Tommy to say more clearly than I did what EquityQuest is and your role and what it does. And then we'll do a go around so we can hear from everyone's voice.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, Bahia, thank you so much for having us on here tonight. Truly an honor to be here to participate in this. This is our first podcast, so this is like totally cool. But thank you so much. And yeah, so I started with EquityQuest in 2020. Kim contacted me through a mutual contact of ours and reached out after George Floyd's murder and said she was trying to do some things with the DEI world, but using the concept of horses as part of that. And I was intrigued immediately. I always enjoyed experiential learning opportunities. And this just sounded like something that was way different from anything else I'd ever done. So I was immediately interested. And so we continued our conversation over the course of a couple of months, decided to bring on another individual. I introduced her to a former colleague of mine, Linda Ferraro, who's not able to be with us because she is a professor and she's teaching this evening. But she has an amazing ability to analyze things very differently from the way Kim and I did. And I thought that was important. Mm. And so after we brought her on, I found out about a gentleman by the name of Carl Jefferson. And Dr. Jefferson will tell you more about himself in a moment. But I was delighted to meet him, and he was an early adapter, which I was really delighted about, because he's an amazing business-minded person, and definitely we needed his energy and his knowledge and skills. And then I had worked with this amazing gentleman named Nasir Bayan, who I had done some training work with. We did a diversity class here in the Atlanta area many years ago. And I never forgot him. I never forgot the energy that he brought to that experience. And I didn't realize just how much his knowledge was around the psychology of all of this. And I was just very fortunate that I found and was able to kind of handpick this incredible team of people. And through a mutual friend of mine also, I got to know Keith Roberts, who is our resident cowboy. I call him our horse whisperer. He's been working with horses since he was about 6 years old. His father introduced him to horses, and he never let go. Keith has a ranch here in the Georgia area, about an hour from where I live, but it's a wonderful spot. He's got several horses and a bull and some other animals out there. And it's just an amazing experience getting to hang out with him and this entire team. So I am truly blessed to be the CEO of this amazing group. And I don't really know what the CEO part means. Everybody's a leader. And we pick up for each other where the others leave off. If there's something that needs to get done, it happens. So that's just a little bit about how we got together and got things going. That's the origin of how we got started.
Thank you. Should we move next to Nasir to tell us what your role is? And
certainly, yeah. So my name is Nasir Bayan. I'm the Chief Information and Technology Officer for EquityQuest. So my background is basically an integration or marriage of both corporate and clinical. I was in corporate for 20 years, essentially doing business development, corporate training, and I also am a licensed mental health professional, licensed psychotherapist. So I know corporate, I know clinical. And when Tommy reached out and told me about the vision for EquityQuest and the impact that, she and Kim envisioned it having, I was immediately hooked because I could see the immediate utility and need in a lot of corporate or organizational spaces for leaders, employees, and teams that really want to engage and do DEI work and know that some of the traditional methods haven't been getting the results that they really want or even need to take their organizations forward. So it didn't take long before, we just realized there was so much alignment. And the last, since then, it's just been a wonderful, wonderful ride experience professionally and personally. So that's a little bit about me and my role at EquityQuest.
Thank you. I think that's a brilliant marriage. Like, what lucky corporations, whoever got to work with you before this, also so lucky to have your blended professional background. Thank you. And Dr. Carl Jefferson, tell us about yourself, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for inviting us all to be with you. I'm Dr. Carl Jefferson. And so what does that mean? So by training, I practice similar to Nasir, using psychometric assessments to really objectively and to quantify and qualify how people show up in organizations. And so I get a chance to practice here with my teams in a blended way like Nasir. So one part of my background is scientific in nature, but the other part is also business. Trained really as someone who operates and runs business, and also with academic credentials in the business suite of things. And so here, my role is just that, supporting the organization in establishing relationships and turning contacts into contracts. And so in terms of executing that role, you can reach us all at EquityQuest.com at a future date on www.EquityQuestCo.com. So there's a way you can reach out to us as well. So I'm putting on my business hat there by here, but definitely into the work of experiences and learning and unlearning themes around inclusion, right? Getting us all to see, feel, and belong together, and to learn and relearn new things. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. I love that. Learn and relearn. Kim.
Yes, Bahia, so good to be here. And as you mentioned, we do go back a couple decades. So I come to this work by way of leadership development, executive coaching, and facilitation. And I have had experience with horses, not a lot, but over the last 10 years, I've been involved in programs where it was equine guided leadership. So women leaders as well as teams. And it was in May of 2020 when I thought, okay, what can I do differently? How can I bring this work to DEI? And I didn't know how. I had no idea how to do it. And I also knew I couldn't do it alone. So that was where this blessed introduction to Tommy happened. And as you can hear, she then built this team. So that's really what brings me into this circle.
Thank you. And thank you for following your vision and acting on it and finding incredible Tommy, who's finding other incredible talent. The first time I met you all, I was just so impressed, and just, it's incredible, the blend and the level of skill, professionalism, and all the various forms of skill, like incredible. So I know that you have held some invitationals in Maine and Connecticut and Georgia, as far as I'm aware. And I would love for you to tell us about what people were being invited to and what those were and the results that came out of invitationals, and if they were different in the different locations.
I'm going to encourage Kim to take this one because it was kind of her concept initially when we were trying to figure out where do we go next. And so I'd like her to run with that part, at least the first one, and we can pick up from there.
Gladly. So we started off in Maine, and the reason we chose an invitational is because this work is hard to describe. It's kind of like you have to experience it. It is so experiential. It's so energetic. And we thought, I think the best way to share this concept, this vision, is to invite DEI practitioners and leaders to a equine center. And there was a beautiful one in Southern Maine, Carlisle Academy. And so we gathered together, as I said, DEI practitioners and leaders, and had a half day where they literally hands-on time with the horses, conversations with horses and humans, the ability to groom the horses, the ability to reflect on each stage of it. And so that was, I would say, a remarkable success. It surpassed our expectations. These DEI practitioners were saying, this is the best thing I've done in this space, and this is what they do. And a lot of them are burned out from the work. It's exhausting work with really no end in sight. So it was not only new for them, but also rejuvenating. So that encouraged us to have another invitational in Connecticut. I'm going to pass the baton back to you, Tommy, to describe that.
So Connecticut was equally impressive. Linda did the legwork pulling that together, and it was done at a spot called High Hopes in Old Lyme, Connecticut. And we had a small but very engaged group of practitioners in the DEI space from a variety of locations, and had very similar experiences to what we saw in Maine as far as the engagement, the energy, the excitement. We had incredible weather for it. And for that one, our entire team was able to be there. Now, I'm not I'm not telling the truth. We didn't have one team member, but it was still really an amazing experience for all of us to see it come to fruition again, and it validated. We had proof of concept at that point. We knew what we were doing was actually working. People were responding to it in a really positive way, and it just further solidified that we were on the right track. So that was incredible. And from there, we moved on to Atlanta literally the next month. So we didn't have a lot of time to recover from that one, and we were going right to the Atlanta market. And I will pass the baton over to Dr. Jefferson and Nasir to talk about that one.
Sure, I'll take a stab. Much like the other two invitationals, Atlanta also delivered. I think the biggest change there was we had a huge shift in weather, right? And so that was one of our learnings, which was how to do this work in nature. And so it was a reminder that it's very possible to do that, to experience horses who are not warm and cozy, not that they need to be. But perhaps humans are also a little frigid in managing themselves with little drips of rain, but still being able to co-create an embodied experience with prompts that immediately get the human in a situation where they can begin to study and uncover and unpack parts of their multiple identities. And so it was a fun time at Chastain Park. Let's hear, what else would you add to that?
Yes, I'm really just kind of echoing I think what already has been shared by Tommy, by Kim, and then by you, Dr. Jefferson, and that is being able to have the same invitational both in Maine and Connecticut and then in Atlanta. We're able to see some through lines in that we had corporate, organizational leaders, HR professionals, people development professionals, and all of them gave some similar feedback in terms of essentially saying, this is new, this is different, this is revolutionary, specifically, as Dr. Jefferson noted, because it is embodied. Okay. Meaning, what percentage of today's leaders are kind of going through life only from the neck up versus having a kind of full body experience? What percentage of leaders, as Kim said, are challenged with things like stress and burnout and overwhelm, even though they're committed to the work? And what's the real solution? And it was extremely confirmatory and exciting to hear that consistent feedback across 3 different invitationals, 3 different states. So much of what my colleagues already shared, I would definitely echo the same sentiments.
Thank you so much. I am so curious about, I think it was, 2 questions, of course, are happening at once, and then I'll get to the third question. But one is just a numbers question. What's the ratio of human beings to horses? So, Nasir, do you want to say that, even if it's just approximate number?
Sure. I so wish our chief operating officer and
Me too.
Mr. Horse expert, Mr. Keith Roberts, was here because he could go so deep into it. Pluck from air. Oh goodness. 3-1, 4-1. I'm looking at my team members because their memory banks might be more accurate than mine in terms of what that horse to participant ratio was. Tommy, Kim, Dr. Jefferson.
I think so. I'll add to it. I think this is a bit of a capacity and a customized experience. So I think ideally when we run each of our kind of intercessions or different experiences with the horse and the humans, generally it's about 2 individuals paired with the horse in a walking situation or a grooming situation. And sometimes there's an observer. So to Nasir's point, it's about 3 humans with a horse, 1,000 ton individual human beings with horses. And so that's how we do it. And so we have the capacity to scale up, but I think that creates the intimacy, right, that we're looking for. And it's a part of the design. So depending on the, the work that we're going to do. I think it lands at about a 3 to 1.
I would agree. And it gives people with that intimacy a chance to really open up and share what's going on for them around some often difficult questions. And they'll change based on the particular company or nonprofit organization, whoever it is we're working with. Those questions will differ, but we will ask or try to ask questions that are challenging in ways that they're not necessarily going to have those opportunities typically, but there are things that are going on in the workspaces that people are talking about, the water cooler conversations that may not necessarily make it to the leadership levels, but the leaders may feel the reactions, even if they're not being verbalized. We're giving them a chance to actually have those discussions with a safe space in that environment. And it's all groundwork, so there's no riding on the horses. That's not what this is about. It's truly about interacting with humans, utilizing the horses in that space to help diffuse some of the energy that might be stirred up with some of the conversations. And then we do a debrief after each activity to talk about what happened. So there's a chance for everybody to collectively say, this is what happened for me, and this is how it made me feel, or these are some of the things that I'm still not sure about. And there's a collective conversation, if you will. So it's really cool.
I have a question about conversation. When I think it was Kim, I think you said conversations with horses. Sometimes I'm very literal. That made me wonder, are some of the conversations, do the people have them with the horses? Like, is that part of it? Or did you not mean it literally?
Well, yes, that can happen. You can literally have a coaching conversation with a horse. We haven't done that yet in our invitationals. It would be part of a longer program. But where the conversation happens is with the horse. The horse is like a conduit. So, for example, when we're grooming the horses, there are 2 people, one on each side of the horse, and they're answering a very challenging question. And there can be a lot of energy in each person as they start this conversation. And, it brings up the question, why horses? Like, and the reason is that they are, they're prey animals, not predators. And so they're very sensitive to energy. Are you friend or foe? And they will give us non-negotiable feedback around our energy. So if we're amped up, the horse is more likely to be amped up. If we start to relax, the horse relaxes. And so we've seen this again and again in these conversations with the horse. We're grooming the horse. We're talking over the back of the horse, literally. And at first, the horse might be kind of moving around, ears moving back and forth because we're uneasy. But as we settle into it, touching the horse, it's that embodied experience, that somatic connection. We settle down, and the horse said, the horse helps to diffuse this energy. So it really supports transformational conversations.
Did you want to add something, Dr. George?
Yeah, I was going to say, I love that. And, every time I'm doing groundwork with horses, I'm absolutely talking. The best thing is the horse is not talking back, which in my profession is a pretty cool thing. Just my time with the horse. And I'm telling you, I'm like, you get the notion that my horse speaks English, right? Because of just the way tails are moving, or if we're really walking changes in step, you can actually feel the connection. I think that's what it is. And it's, clearly nonverbal, but it's such an exchange. It's so dynamic, which is the most powerful thing. Right? It's like we all have pets at home, right? Or for those of us who do. And you can ask, your pet to do a thing and whatever, or you see them moving, and sometimes their eyes look back at you and you can make meaning of what they're saying. It's like sometimes they'll side eye you. It's all true, without the spoken word, there is still a discussion. There is still a conversation. There's still exchanges, right? And I think it's across language. And that's what horses kind of do to this work. A chance to have dialogue without necessarily all the words or even knowing which words to use.
Thanks. You're bringing back to me a conversation when I was lucky enough to be able to meet with Tommy and Keith before, the horse whisperer, the horseman, the cowboy. And he was, I asked him for examples of, messages from the horses and how to read horses, since a lot of people imagine that you work with are not familiar with horses. And not that it's necessarily their job to read the horses, but anyway, Tommy, remember how Keith was listing, like, well, ears back, ears, tails, hooves, snorts, movement.
All of that.
Yeah.
And of all of us, I'm one of the people that has the least experience with horses. Kim and we haven't mentioned her mom is also part of our team. And she has been a horse person since she was about 7 years old. And she's our senior wise sage. And she just is wonderful. She holds space for us and just kind of keeps us grounded. But she will also refer to the things that she notices about the horses as far as things that they do. But what Keith did talk about was definitely if you start to see their ears going down and their tails drop, you can tell that there's something happening, and that's probably a horse that needs to be maybe moved away because he's getting a little anxious or something. But he's good at knowing that and paying attention. And Kim and Linda are also more horse oriented than some of the rest of us. So they would also be able to pick up on some of those nuances that maybe I wouldn't, or Nasir and Carl wouldn't, because we're not as familiar. But we're learning, and that's what's really cool about all this. We never feel like or have any of our participants feeling like they're in any danger. We're always working with therapeutic horses. These are horses that are used to being around people and working with people, particularly people that may have traumatic injuries or some other kind of physical or emotional, neurological challenge that they're dealing with. So they're horses that are used to being around and being calm around people. So that's another thing that's really important in the work that we do. Safety is always first and foremost in everything. And having Keith on the team, as well as other members who are very familiar with horses, is incredibly important to us. And we always have horse handlers from the respective barns that we work with, who work with these animals every day. So again, it's always a safe space that we create for every aspect of what we're doing. That's really important to us.
No doubt. Thank you for spelling that out, though. That's really good to hear.
Absolutely.
For people wondering. I was going to ask Nasir, what are you seeing from humans? I keep saying humans, but like if you compare your past, like clinical mental health, observations and insights you had from people, what's different about what horses are showing you or bringing up and out and people that you didn't see when it was not in nature with horses?
Bahia, I love this question. Ooh, I love this question. To try to, I guess, give a kind of concise answer, most folks that are working in corporations or organizations have heard the term of psychological safety at some point over the last probably 2 or 3 years, going through pandemic and everything that's come with that. And as Kim mentioned, because horses are prey animals, they're always attuned to what's going on in their environment and around them. And a part of the beauty of horses, and I'm actually this is a shout out to our chief horse whisperer, Keith Roberts. What horses are doing when they're interacting with humans is they're reading our nervous systems. So if we're, calm and kind of resourced and collected, they're picking up on that. If we're maybe kind of in fight mode, they're picking up on that. If we're in flight mode, they're picking up on that. Or if we're in freeze mode, or better, I guess even more directly, if our nervous systems are in freeze mode, they're picking up on that. So I guess to answer that question, working with horses helps to really ground a lot of leaders and create psychological safety if it wasn't there before, or enhance it if it was there. And it can really help to take leaders, organizations, whole teams that may sometimes be stuck in fight, flight, or freeze, and actually get them out of that response. So then they or we can engage fully and do the work that needs to be done within our respective organizations or disciplines. So again, love the question. And horses are just, amazing at really facilitating that transformation with leaders and teams.
I'm so curious. I wonder what the horses are thinking. I really do. And as Kim knows, I grew up with a sister who's, and Tommy and Keith know too, who was obsessed with horses really early on, made us all ride horses, whether she asked us or not. We were on horses and, galloped away, which I'm so grateful for now. I'm so grateful for those experiences. And it just makes me wonder. I'm just wondering out loud if anybody wants to take this. I'm sure they don't, they think differently, but they're so intelligent and sensitive, as you're all describing so well. I wonder what they think about, if they have an awareness that they're facilitating at all, and what their assessment of that is. Is that interesting to anyone to take?
Well, I'll hazard a pass on this. For starters, is that horses and animals in general live in the present moment. They're not thinking so much about the past, and they're not really thinking too much about the future. And that's one of their gifts. One of the ways in which they guide us is to be here now. So they're just really situationally aware of what's happening and energetically responsive to it in the moment. So that's sort of like the fact that they're not elsewhere is one of their biggest gifts, I would say.
Yeah. I would also add, and I hazard too, my experience is they know who they are. They know their name, right? They show up fully present. And so when you say their names, you just can see just tinglings or hairs or eyelashes batting. And I experience that quite a bit every time when you just repeat their names or acknowledge their presence. You'll sometimes see deep breaths or just a presence and a centering with you. And I make meaning that they're there to be of service and to be of support. Whatever work to be done, it seems like they're willing to do it just naturally. And a kind of investment, like a situational investment for that moment of time, they're able to be fully present.
I guess thank you. Great hazarding, both of you. But that really matches, because they're just so that would be the most intelligent, self-protective thing to do, right? To be. But I'd love to also. I want to make sure we talk about an example of a transformation or transformative moment you've seen with people working on equity and inclusion matters that has occurred that you can share about, to give an example of some power shifts or power sharing, or like a eureka that some professional people had during their work with you.
So I'll try to set that up for us, and I'll partner with Tommy, because this was an occasion we were actually working together. And words all have meaning and power. And so we had an experience, and we were conducting a team debrief. And across identity for two humans, perhaps sharing the same race, but other differences in their identity, they were actually explaining back an experience that they had with horse and presence in the moment, right? And I'll tee that up for Tommy so that she could talk about it. But we were actually getting down into this moment of using really the biological parts of a horse, which is their hoofs and footing, right? So our work is on the ground. It's actually walking with horses, and so we had a prompt about how important it is to be able to get your footing in any situation in order to feel comfortable perhaps psychologically safe and secure and in the moment. And how, in some situations, it seems very simple to go about achieving that. But Tommy, as we quickly learned, in a real dynamic, that wasn't the case. And so, Tommy, what would you add to that?
It was the two women that were partnered together in a particular activity. I believe it was a blindfold activity where they had their eyes, one had their eyes covered and the other was leading the other with the horse. And then they switched places. And so both of them had the experience. And when we came back and talked about it, the one woman said, and she happened to be a white woman, said, I knew we were on the same footing. And the other woman happened to be an African-American woman. And she turned to her and she said, actually, we weren't on the same footing. I was not on the same footing with you. And in that moment, it was this aha of like, oh my. And it just brought up some of the assumptions that we often make when we're doing things, whether it's working with a group of people on a horse activity or even back in the workspace. When you're a leader and you assume that you've given an instruction and then it doesn't happen the way it's supposed to, and then you come back and you see the results and they weren't what you were expecting, you may have thought you were on equal footing in that moment with that individual or with that team of people, and you weren't. And it happens often. Sometimes it's assumptions that we make. Sometimes it's information that's misinterpreted. Maybe there's language barriers or different cultural issues that come into play. So all these different diversity dimensions in that moment were on play. You can throw anything into that mix as far as what could have happened in a real world situation. And it was like, whoa. Even in that moment, I think the team was looking at each other like, I didn't expect that, did you? But it was beautiful. It was brilliant. And it was just one of those moments that happens in a training experience or a learning experience that pops up and makes for an amazing, fodder, if you will, for real life, the real world. And I want to say one other thing about the relationship, the human relationship, horse relationship. One of the other things that we do, and we started doing in Connecticut because we had an seer there for the first time, is we created this opportunity at the very beginning of the session to have a mindfulness moment with the participants where they got to do, he does these amazing breathing exercises. He tees it up beautifully. It's very relatable. They love it. And then after each segment, he goes back to it and reminds them, hey, don't forget to breathe. And he takes them back to that same mindset and space. It helps to bring them in with the horses. It helps to kind of introduce them. A lot of people walk into that having never been around these 1,000-pound creatures. So there's some intimidation factors that could be at play. And it just helps to bring people's energy to a good space so that when they do engage with the horses for the first time, they're feeling comfortable with it. At least that's the experiences that we've had so far. And I just wanted to mention that and bring Nasir back in if he wants to talk a little bit about that too.
Certainly. I guess simply put, the taking a moment, during our customized solutions, or taking moments during our customized solutions to kind of intentionally pause or bring a moment of mindfulness or a moment of just grounding and coming home to what's present in the moment literally helps us to come to our senses. Meaning, our sense of touch, taste, hear, see, smell in any given moment. And sometimes that's revolutionary for leaders, teams, or organizations, because out of necessity, we've always had to go, do, and sometimes override. And we may miss the fact that there's data that's here right now. And when we slow down and take those mindful moments, we get access to it, not only that data out there, but data in here that empowers us as leaders or professionals. So thank you for sharing that, Tom.
Yeah, I just thought that was important for you to hear, because it is an amazing part of what we do. And as I said, we didn't do it the first time, and we thought about it the second time. How can we utilize some of what Nasir just does naturally to blend into this? And from that point on, it's like, you got this spot, Nasir. You got to open us up every time, because it was perfect.
I love that. Literally coming to our senses.
Mm-hmm.
That's so true. That thought had never clicked for me before. Thanks for that one.
Mahia, if I could weigh in here, circle back to your question about transformational examples.
Please.
What Nasir just described, we're calling it the EquityQuest way. So these are practices that we're developing as a team and sharing with our clients as we go. And so just a week ago, we met by Zoom with someone who was in one of our invitationals over a year ago. And we did that breathing exercise with Nasir, and we talked about the horses and our senses, and it brought all of us back to that moment, which was over a year ago. Now, this person is a police officer leader and very concerned about officer wellness. And so he could remember, he had that memory anchor, that somatic anchor back to that experience, 15 months later. That's part of the power, is that once we've had this immersive experience, we can remember it really for the rest of our lives, and we can come back to it as a touchstone. So we're partnering with this police officer leader about how could we develop a customized solution for officers and their well-being. That's just another very recent example of the longitudinal power of this work.
Well, thank you for the other example. I have a question about stepping back and stepping forward. But before I ask that, I want to ask, does anyone else have an example or subject you want to bring up before I throw out another question?
I think the only thing that I would possibly add is to what Kim just shared. That same individual knows the name of his horse, right? And has the opportunity and the ability to go check in. And even in our absence, can still revisit the prompts that we use, or the work, the individual work that he is actually doing to find the collected energy and the intelligence, right, to persist through with his dream work. And so it's very interesting how not just him, but most people actually remember their horse's name. And so do I. So I'm thinking of Hank, in Atlanta and other places as well. So it's very interesting how that works. So it's like you never forget your horse. So there you go.
That's wonderful. I can just imagine it's just because it's embodied and experiential. The cells of the body can remember it. And that's amazing how it came back a year later over Zoom.
And I imagine the horses remember the individuals as well. There was one in Old Lyme. Linda knows these horses well because she boards her horse there, and she volunteers there. And she said this one horse is not typically a horse that's real personable. Typically, after the activity, the same gentleman that Kim was referring to, after we finished the day and they were just kind of meandering towards the open pens again, Candy heard his voice and she turned around and came back to the fence. Linda said she never does that.
Oh, wow.
She never does that. And she came back. So they remember us as well, especially when they have that good interaction with people.
That is so true. Again, I'm thinking of my sister. She is very loved. So many horses love her. That's a beautiful thing when a horse recognizes you and wants to come. So we have just 5 minutes left. My gosh. So I'm curious. I'm actually interviewing a lot of different leaders now about comparing experiences for leaders of color who have not been given the platform and over time, are ready and have been waiting to be able to have voice, platform, space, position, influence, and then leaders who have had it for centuries and are learning to step back and make space and realize how much everything is better when we do that. So I'm just curious if this team wants to share any experiences of a stepping back or stepping forward dynamic, because I feel like just the glimpses I've had of you all, I feel like this team is walking this talk. And I really appreciate it. And there's another reason I wanted to have you on. So I don't know if anyone wants to share either being from a position of stepping forward or stepping back, so to speak.
I'm laughing. When I got involved in this, I always thought of Kim as the leader because this was her idea, her concept. And I even went as far as to introduce us to a group, and the individual thought it was my concept and my doing. I was like, oh, no, it's another person. And then he felt it wasn't my thing. And he kind of backed away. And I told Kim, and she said, Tommy, you got to stop doing that. It's not mine. I don't want to have that kind of, not necessarily ownership, but we are a team. This is ours. And I was like, okay, I get that. And then once we brought Keith into the fold, Keith and I had an interesting conversation after a couple of meetings. And I said, how do you think it's going? He said, I think it's going good, Tommy, but you need to lead. Like, okay. What do you mean by that exactly, Keith? And he said to me, you are the one who brought us all into this. We're looking to you for leadership. And I was like, I didn't really think of it that way, but I guess you got a point there. And from that point on, I think it was about last October, November or so, when we met, I started having an actual agenda. I was like, what do we want to talk about? And I started taking on that role from a very different point of view and perspective. And I checked back with him a couple of months later and said, so has anything changed? And he said, absolutely. It's way better. Thank you. So it's interesting. Working in corporate America, you tend to step lightly into certain leadership roles. And I guess I've been maybe, I don't know what the word is, but conditioned to be careful about what I say and do. And I realized really quickly that wasn't necessary with this team. If somebody had something to say, if somebody disagrees with something, they'll talk about it, they'll say it. And we hold space for each other to really open up and share our thoughts and be honest, be transparent about what's going on. So there's never a sense of me walking away from any meeting and not feeling like I don't understand what's happening. And if there's someone that has a concern, they will pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, this is what's going on for me, or this is what I heard, or can you clarify? And I'll do the same thing. So it's been an interesting journey, and it hasn't been a long one, but what we've accomplished in the short period of time that we have been together is truly remarkable. And so as far as anyone stepping up, stepping back, at least from my perspective, I've always felt very safe and very comfortable in speaking my truth and hearing other people's truths as well. So that's how that has looked for me. And I invite you all to add or subtract in whatever way.
Oh, I am sorry. We actually literally don't have any more time. So you guys will just have to come back. We'll do this again. Honestly, we really need to. There's so much more to hear from you all. What great leadership. What great modeling. What a great paradigm. I'm so excited. I can't wait to be there somewhere, sometime, somehow. I already love you all. Thank you again so much. I also want to thank our sorry to cut you off, our engineer and our producer and our viewers and our listeners. And be sure to tune in next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to It's Your Voice. And may we all have enriching conversations in diversity this week.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the